The pink sheet with the unicorn still lay crumpled in the corner of 4-year-old Bella Watts' bedroom when police arrived at 2825 Saratoga Trail in Frederick, Colorado, on August 13, 2018. It was the same sheet she had been clutching when her father, Christopher Lee Watts, strangled her to death just hours earlier. But that morning, as neighbors gathered outside the seemingly perfect suburban home, no one could have imagined that the frantic husband pleading for his family's safe return was the very person who had destroyed them. The Watts family had been the embodiment of the American dream on social media. Shanann Watts, 34, was a successful marketing consultant, constantly posting inspirational messages and family photos to her 3,000 Facebook friends. Chris Watts, 33, worked as an operator for Anadarko Petroleum and was portrayed in Shanann's posts as the devoted father and husband. Their daughters, 4-year-old Bella and 3-year-old Celeste, appeared in countless videos singing, dancing, and playing in their spacious home. According to the Frederick Police Department case file, the investigation began when Shanann's friend, Nicole Atkinson, called 911 after Shanann failed to show up for a scheduled business meeting. "She never misses appointments," Nicole told the dispatcher. "Her car is here, her purse is here, her phone is here, but she's gone, and so are the girls." What Nicole didn't know was that Chris Watts had been waiting for this call, had planned for this moment when concerned friends would discover his family missing. The body camera footage from Officer Scott Coonrod shows Chris Watts' first performance as the concerned husband. "I have no idea where they went," he told the officer, his voice steady and controlled. But Detective Dave Baumhover noticed something disturbing. Chris never asked what they were doing to find his family, never suggested places to look, never showed the frantic desperation expected from a father whose pregnant wife and daughters had vanished. Behind the social media facade, the family was drowning in $70,000 of credit card debt and facing foreclosure on their $400,000 home. Chris had found what he believed was a solution. Nicole Kessinger, a 30-year-old geologist working for Anadarko Petroleum. What investigators would discover in the next 48 hours would reveal one of the most calculated acts of family annihilation in modern American history. According to Chris Watts' detailed confession given to investigators on November 6, 2018, the murders began at approximately 4 a.m. on August 13, 2018, in the master bedroom of their Frederick home. Shanann had returned from her business trip to Arizona around 2 a.m. Security footage from neighbor Nate Tranastich's surveillance camera shows Shanann arriving at 1:48 a.m. and the interior lights of the Watts home remaining on until nearly 4 a.m. "I walked into that house that night planning to kill all of them," Chris told investigators months later. "I had been thinking about it for weeks. The financial problems, Shanann's pregnancy, the kids, it all felt like a trap that I couldn't escape from. I wanted to start over with Nicole, and my family was an obstacle to that." This admission revealed that the murders were not crimes of passion, but calculated acts of elimination driven by his narcissistic desire for a new life without responsibility. The autopsy report conducted by Dr. Scott Rourke revealed that Shanann had been strangled from behind while lying in bed, with no defensive wounds suggesting she was asleep when the attack occurred. The toxicology report showed she had taken Benadryl before bed, which would have made her drowsy and less likely to wake up during the initial assault. But the most devastating evidence came from Chris's final confession about his daughters. "I walked into Bella's room first," he told investigators. "I started to strangle her and she woke up. She looked at me and said, 'Daddy, no.' Those were her last words." The emotional impact of this revelation on seasoned investigators was profound. Detective Tammy Lee later said it was the most difficult moment of her 20-year career. The timeline reconstruction shows the methodical nature of his actions. After killing his family, Chris loaded their bodies into his truck at approximately 5:15 a.m. Neighbor Nate Tranastich's security camera captured Chris backing his truck up to his garage and loading what appeared to be large objects wrapped in sheets. At 5:23 a.m., his cell phone GPS shows him leaving the neighborhood, heading toward the Chervy Ranch oil field. Chris had to be at work for a meeting at 6:30 a.m. After disposing of 3 bodies, he calmly attended his scheduled meeting and began his performance as the worried husband. Within hours of the missing persons report, Chris Watts transformed himself into the desperate husband that America would see on their television screens. The Frederick Police Department organized an immediate search effort, and Chris positioned himself at the center of it. appearing helpful and cooperative while secretly knowing exactly where his family's bodies were located. The local news media arrived by noon on August 13th, and Chris eagerly participated in interviews. The footage, later analyzed by behavioral experts, shows a man displaying none of the physiological signs of genuine distress. Dr. Lillian Glass, a body language expert who reviewed the interviews, noted that Chris never touched his wedding ring, never used past tense when referring to his family, and maintained steady eye contact while describing his anguish. The most damaging evidence came from Chris's interview with Denver 7 reporter Thomas Hoppau, conducted on the front porch of his home while search teams combed the neighborhood. She said she was going to a friend's house with the kids. Chris told the camera, despite having told police earlier that he had no idea where they went. "I just want them to come home." The inconsistency was immediately noted by investigators. Social media became another stage for Chris's performance. He shared the missing persons posts on his Facebook page, added concerned comments to neighborhood group discussions, and even thanked volunteers who were searching for his missing family. According to digital forensics expert Jennifer Buchholz, Chris's online activity showed a pattern of narcissistic behavior. He was enjoying the attention, the drama, the sense of being at the center of a major event. Perhaps most disturbing was Chris's interaction with Shanann's family during this period. Her parents, Frank and Sandra Ruchek, had flown in from North Carolina to help with the search. According to their statements to police, Chris showed no emotional connection to their grief and seemed irritated by their questions. "It was like he was going through the motions," Sandra Ruchek told investigators. "There was no warmth, no real concern." While Chris Watts was performing for cameras and manipulating grieving family members, investigators were quietly building a case that would expose every lie he had told. By August 14th, less than 24 hours after the family was reported missing, investigators had identified multiple inconsistencies in Chris Watts' story. Detective Dave Baumhover and FBI agent Graham Coder began conducting intensive interviews with Chris, using techniques designed to give him opportunities to tell the truth while documenting his continued deception. The first major inconsistency involved the timeline of Shanann's return home. Chris had initially told police that Shanann came home around midnight, but security footage showed her arriving at 1:48 a.m. When confronted with this evidence, Chris changed his story, claiming he had been confused about the time. However, phone records showed he had been awake and actively texting during the period when Shanann arrived. The polygraph examination, conducted on August 15th, provided clear evidence of Chris's deception. According to polygraph examiner Tammy Lee's official report, Chris showed deception indicators on every question related to his family's disappearance. When asked, "Do you know where your family is?" the physiological response indicated not just deception, but extreme stress. After being told he had failed, Chris simply nodded and asked what happened next. During this period, investigators were analyzing Chris's cell phone data and GPS tracking from his work truck. The digital evidence showed that Chris had made an unusual trip to the Chevy Ranch oil field on the morning his family disappeared, a location he had no scheduled work reason to visit. When questioned about this trip, Chris claimed he had gone there to check on some equipment, but work records showed no maintenance requests. The investigation also revealed Chris's affair with Nicole Kessinger, which he had initially denied. Phone records showed over 2,000 text messages between Chris and Nicole in the weeks leading up to the murders, including conversations about their future together and Chris's plans to finalize his divorce. Most damaging was Chris's internet search history, which revealed research into topics including how long does it take for someone to be declared dead, and can you break someone's neck with your hands? As the evidence mounted against him, Chris Watts faced a choice: continue his lies and face overwhelming proof of his guilt, or confess to crimes that would destroy any remaining sympathy. On August 15, 2018, after failing his polygraph examination and being confronted with mounting evidence, Chris Watts' carefully constructed facade finally collapsed. At 11:25 p.m., he requested to speak with investigators and provided his first partial confession. However, this initial admission was another manipulation. Chris claimed that Shanann had strangled their daughters after he told her about his affair, and that he had killed Shanann in a rage upon discovering what she had done. FBI agent Graham Coder immediately recognized this story as another lie. "The timeline doesn't work," Agent Coder told Chris. "The physical evidence doesn't support your story." and the autopsy results will prove you're still lying to us. The psychological pressure of being caught in another lie finally broke through Chris's narcissistic defenses. At 4:23 a.m. on August 16th, Chris provided investigators with the location of his family's bodies and agreed to accompany them to the Chervy Ranch. The body camera footage from this recovery operation shows Chris directing investigators to the exact locations where he had disposed of his family. "Shanann is over there," he told Detective Baumhover, pointing to a shallow grave. "The girls are in the tanks." The recovery of Bella and Celeste's bodies required specialized equipment to drain the crude oil from the tanks. According to crime scene investigator Bradley Wardlow's official report, the children's bodies had been submerged in oil for 3 days but were remarkably well preserved. The sight of the 2 small bodies being lifted from the tanks had a profound emotional impact on everyone present. The autopsy results confirmed that all 3 victims had been murdered by manual strangulation. Shanann's autopsy revealed that she was 15 weeks pregnant with a male fetus, whom she had planned to name Nico. The children's autopsies showed that they had fought for their lives, with Bella having bite marks on her tongue where she had clenched her jaw during the strangulation. Perhaps most disturbing was the discovery of crude oil in 4-year-old Bella's stomach, indicating that she was still alive when she was pushed through the hatch of the oil tank. This evidence contradicted Chris's claim that both children were dead before he disposed of their bodies. With overwhelming physical evidence confirming his guilt, Chris Watts would provide one final confession that revealed details so disturbing that even experienced investigators struggled to comprehend his depravity. On November 6, 2018, Chris Watts provided his final and complete confession to FBI agent Graham Coder and Detective Dave Baumhover. This 5-hour interview, conducted at the Dodge Correctional Institution, revealed the full scope of his crimes and the shocking psychological motivations behind them. The transcript, later released by the Weld County District Attorney's Office, provides one of the most detailed accounts of family annihilation ever recorded. "I walked into that house that night planning to kill all of them," Chris told investigators. "I had been thinking about it for weeks. The financial problems, Shanann's pregnancy, the kids, it all felt like a trap that I couldn't escape from. I wanted to start over with Nicole, and my family was an obstacle to that." This admission revealed that the murders were calculated acts of elimination, driven by his narcissistic desire for a new life without responsibility. The psychological analysis conducted by Dr. Lena Durhally revealed that Chris exhibited classic traits of malignant narcissism: a grandiose sense of self-importance, lack of empathy, and willingness to exploit or harm others to achieve his goals. Chris Watts viewed his family not as human beings with their own rights and value, but as extensions of himself that he could dispose of when they became inconvenient, Dr. Durhally wrote. The confession revealed the extent of Chris's planning and premeditation. He had researched the oil tanks at his worksite specifically because he believed the crude oil would destroy DNA evidence. He had chosen the Chervy Ranch location because it was remote and he had legitimate access through his work. He had even practiced his concerned husband performance, rehearsing what he would say to police. Most disturbing was Chris's description of his daughter's final moments. "Bella walked in on me killing Celeste," he told investigators. "She asked me what was wrong with Cease. I told her that Mommy was sick and that Cease was going to take care of her. Then I killed Bella too." The casual tone with which Chris described murdering his children shocked even experienced interrogators. The motive was entirely selfish and narcissistic. Chris wanted to start a new life with Nicole Kessinger without the financial burden and parental responsibilities of his existing family. He viewed the murders as a practical solution to what he perceived as a problem. The complete picture that emerged was of a man so consumed by narcissistic entitlement that he viewed the murder of his pregnant wife and 2 young daughters as a reasonable solution to his personal inconvenience. On November 19, 2018, Chris Watts appeared in Weld County District Court to enter his plea in one of the most closely watched criminal cases in recent American history. Facing 3 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of murdering a child under 12, 1 count of unlawful termination of pregnancy, and 3 counts of tampering with deceased human remains, Chris accepted a plea agreement to avoid the death penalty. Frank Ruchek, Shanann's father, delivered a victim impact statement that brought the packed courtroom to tears. "Chris, I have no idea how you could do this to your family," he said, looking directly at his former son-in-law. Shanann was the best thing that ever happened to you. And Bella and Celeste were perfect little girls who loved you unconditionally. You threw it all away for a fantasy life that was never going to happen. Sandra Ruchek, Shanann's mother, focused her statement on her granddaughters. Bella was starting to read, and Cease was just learning to ride her bike without training wheels. They had their whole lives ahead of them, and you stole that from them. Court observers noted that Chris showed no visible emotion during these impact statements, staring straight ahead as the families described the devastation he had caused. The media coverage of the Watts case was unprecedented in scope and intensity. The story dominated cable news networks, generated millions of social media posts, and spawned dozens of documentary projects. According to media analyst Dr. Sarah Bennett Weiser, the case struck a particular nerve because it shattered fundamental assumptions about family safety and paternal love. Judge Kopkow sentenced Chris Watts to 5 life sentences without the possibility of parole, plus 48 years for the unlawful termination of pregnancy and an additional 36 years for tampering with the bodies. This is perhaps the most inhumane and vicious crime that I have handled out of the thousands of cases that have come before this court, Judge Kopkow said during sentencing. Nothing less than a maximum sentence would be appropriate in this case. The psychological evaluation conducted for sentencing revealed that Chris continued to show no genuine remorse for his crimes. His primary concern was his own comfort and safety in prison, not the impact of his actions on his victims or their families. The conclusion of the legal proceedings marked the end of Chris Watts' public performance, but the impact of his crimes would continue to reverberate and serve as a case study in narcissistic family annihilation. As of 2024, Christopher Lee Watts remains incarcerated at the Dodge Correctional Institution in Waupun, Wisconsin, serving 5 life sentences without the possibility of parole. According to recent prison records, Chris has adapted well to institutional life, working in the prison kitchen and maintaining a clean disciplinary record. However, psychological evaluations continue to show no genuine remorse for his crimes or empathy for his victims. The Watts case has become a cornerstone study in criminal psychology programs and law enforcement training academies across the United States. The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit uses the case to teach investigators how to recognize the warning signs of family annihilation and the behavioral patterns of narcissistic killers who present themselves as cooperative witnesses. One of the most important lessons from the Watts case is the danger of social media facades in masking domestic abuse and family dysfunction. Experts now recognize that abusers often use social media to create false narratives of family happiness while isolating and controlling their victims behind closed doors. The case has also highlighted the importance of financial stress as a risk factor for family violence. Prison records show that Chris Watts continues to receive thousands of letters from people around the world, including marriage proposals from women attracted to his notoriety. According to correctional officials, Chris reads these letters and occasionally responds, but shows no interest in discussing his crimes or expressing remorse. Mental health evaluations indicate that Chris remains narcissistically focused on his own comfort and well-being. The memorial for Shanann Bella Celeste, an unborn baby Nico, has become a place of pilgrimage for those affected by family violence. The case serves as a stark reminder that the most dangerous predators often hide behind facades of normalcy and respectability, using social media to project perfection while planning destruction. The Netflix documentary American Murder, The Family Next Door, used actual footage and social media posts to tell the story, becoming one of the most watched true crime documentaries in Netflix history. The film's impact was particularly powerful because it used Shanann's own content to show the contrast between public happiness and private horror. Next week, we'll explore another case that challenges everything we think we know about family trust, the Turpin House of Horrors, where 13 children were held captive and tortured by their own parents for decades in a suburban California home that neighbors thought belonged to a normal religious family. How do we protect ourselves and our loved ones from predators who hide behind perfect facades? What warning signs should we watch for when social media perfection seems too good to be true? Share your thoughts in the comments below.